so I'm just going to briefly go over specifically completing the square. That's mainly what we were going to do today. So if we were given y squared minus 2y minus 12x equal to negative 11. So if we had this, right, and it said, take this parabola and analyze it and solve for everything that we need. So that's the equation, focus, vertice, latus rectum, right, all those things. What would you do, right? Because it's obviously not in standard form that we use. So what do? Well, this is when we go back to college algebra and we actually use this old thing called completing the square, right? So we're going to take this y squared minus 2y and leave it by itself, right? Because remember, with the parabola standard form equation, we want a squared thing on one side. I'm going to take this 12x and add it to the other side. So we're going to have 12x minus 11. Okay, so now this is where completing the square comes into play. So we're going to look at this left side, and to complete the square for something that looks like this, you're going to take the coefficient and the sign in front of it, so negative 2. You're going to divide that by 2. That's a negative 1. This number is pretty important, so but we'll come back to that later. Square it, and then you're going to get 1. Okay, so this is the number that you're going to add to both sides. All right. Ooh, so I guess I set this up wrong. This should actually be a 13. Sorry. Change that to a 13. Okay, so we're going to come over here. Y squared minus 2y plus 1 is equal to 12x minus 12. Okay, so, well, okay, we have this, now what? Well, the reason why we added this specific number is because this will factor into something really cool. It will factor into y minus 1 times y minus 1. Pretty handy, actually. Okay, and if these are both the same thing, then I could say one of them squared, right? 2 times 2, same thing as 2 squared. It's kind of that idea. So I'm going to rewrite this as y minus 1 quantity squared. Boom. Is equal to, so we got a 12 here and a 12 here, so I'm going to factor that out, and we're going to get 12 times x minus 1. Now, if you'll notice, we're in parabola standard form with an h and a k, right? The center of this parabola has just been moved to the right one and up one. Okay, so I'm going to get a little drawing going on. So we got, really, I'm going to need it pretty big because I'm terrible at drawing on this. So we went over 1 and we went up 1. So here's the center of the parabola. Now we just need to find the a, right? So 12 should, from our equation, remember this one is in the standard form of y minus h squared is equal to 4a x minus k, right? So that means 12 has to be equivalent to the 4a part. So if I solve for this, A is going to be equivalent to 3. All right. So we got A equals 3, which means we know how far away the focus is going to be from the vertex. Okay, so how do we know which way this thing is opening or what it looks like? Well, since the y is squared, we know that it's opening right or left, and there's no negative in front of this. So it's going to open up this way. Okay, and since it's opening up this way, we know this always, as Professor Gutler says, it hugs the focus. So we're going to go 3 away from the vertex to the right. 1, 2, 3. So the focus is about right here. Okay. So this is what this thing kind of looks like. So let's find the latus rectum. We're just going to plug in 3 for x when we get here. Okay, so we plug that in to get the latus rectum. And the reason why is because we want to find the points that is here and here. And we know for sure it's going to be with the focus, because remember the latus rectum goes along the focus. So we want to pick the point that's going to stay the same for the focus and both of the latus rectum, which is the x, right? It's always going to be x equals 4. All right, so we'll plug in 4 here. That'll give me 12 times 3, which is 36. And then y minus 1, right. So we'll do y minus 1, whole thing squared, is equal to 36. Quantity squared. So we got to get rid of that square. So take the square root of both sides. So this will give me plus or minus 6, which is important because that's just basically the distance we're going to go from the focus. 6 either way. So that'll be 6. And then we go y minus 1 is equal to this. So our final answer is going to be y equals 1 plus or minus 6. Okay, so that's going to put me at y equals 7, and then y equals, ooh, very off in my drawing, negative 5 for the y there. Okay, so let's get some points going. We know this is at 1, 1, and we get that from the h and k over here, -1 and -1. A way you could think about it is it's just the opposite sign. Gives you where your center is for these, right? So it's negative, but it's just going to be positive instead. That's a little pattern you can use. We know the focus is at 4, 1. And then we know the points here are going to be 4, 7, and 4, -5. And that should be everything. All right. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to email me, and I will see you tomorrow.